I trusted her with my family and she destroyed me. Brooklyn lied, manipulated, and betrayed me so completely that I began questioning my own mind. My son turned against me, my grandson was scared, and my life spiraled into paranoia and depression. The truth came out, but the damage she caused was irreversible. You won't believe how far she went. I'll never forget the way my son looked at me that night like I was a stranger, like I was dangerous. His voice cracked as he said it, his arms spread protectively around Brooklyn, my daughter-in-law. Dad, you need to stop this, you're scaring her, you're scaring me. I was standing in the middle of the living room, shaking, holding a crumpled stack of papers in my hand, my own medical records. The ones Brooklyn had shown me just a week earlier, whispering that the doctors thought I was slipping, that maybe my memory was going, that maybe I wasn't safe to be around my own grandson. And in that moment, looking into my son's eyes, I realized she had one. Jason, you don't understand. I choked, my voice raw, desperate. She's lying to you. She's been lying to all of us. These records, these aren't real. I don't even have these conditions. But Jason just flinched, as if my words were a physical blow. His eyes darted to Brooklyn, and she God. I can still see it. She pressed trembling fingers to her lips, let tears roll silently down her cheeks, and shook her head like she was too afraid to even speak. I swear I saw the faintest flicker of satisfaction in her eyes before she buried her face into Jason's chest. He wrapped his arms around her. My son, my own flesh and blood, shielding her from me. Dad, Jason said again, this time firm, resolute. I think you should go. We'll talk about this later, but right now, you need to leave. I couldn't breathe. I felt like the air had been sucked from the room. I stumbled back a step, clutching those papers like they were proof of my sanity, proof that I wasn't losing my mind. Jason, I whispered. My voice sounded small, broken. I'm your father. You've known me your whole life. Do you really believe I'd hurt anyone? Do you really believe her over me? And then came the nail in the coffin. Jason's voice flat. I believe what I see, and what I see is a man who's not himself anymore. It was like being buried alive. Brooklyn peeked up from his shoulder just enough to meet my eyes, and for a split second, barely noticeable, her lips curved into the slightest smirk. Not grief, not fear. Triumph. That's when my knees buckled. I collapsed onto the couch behind me, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. My own son was looking at me like I was insane, like I was dangerous, because she had written my reality. And the worst part? I had started to believe it myself. For months, Brooklyn had been planting seeds. Quiet comments about me forgetting things. Subtle reminders that I'd repeated a story. Suggesting maybe I should get my eyes checked, my memory tested. At first, I brushed it off as concern. But then she escalated to telling Jason she'd found me confused, wandering the street, telling the grandkids not to leave sharp objects near your grandpa, just in case. And then the medical records. The proof. Only the hospital confirmed later they weren't real. But by then the damage was done. Sitting there on that couch, I felt stripped bare. Humiliated. My hands trembled as Jason guided Brooklyn to the kitchen, away from me, as though I were some kind of threat. I could hear her muffled sobs and his soft reassurances, words I used to give him when he was a boy. And me? I sat in silence, staring at those forged papers, feeling my mind fracture. Was I crazy? Was I paranoid? Or was I finally seeing the monster hiding in plain sight? When Jason returned, his voice was ice. Dad, if you love us, if you love me, you'll leave before this gets worse. I opened my mouth to argue, to scream, to fight for my name, but nothing came out. Just silence. So I stood up, shoulders hunched, clutching those lies in my hands, and walked out of my son's house knowing I might never be welcome there again. The door clicked shut behind me, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I was the villain in my own family. If you'd asked me 5 years ago what I thought of Brooklyn, I would have said she was a blessing. The kind of woman a father dreams his son will marry. Smart, confident, warm, the type who looked you in the eye and made you feel like you mattered. First time Jason brought her home, she hugged me before I even extended my hand. You raised an incredible man, she told me, and I swear, my chest nearly burst with pride. She knew exactly what to say, how to say it. My late wife had passed just 2 years earlier, and I was lonely. Having Brooklyn around filled a hole I didn't even realize was still raw. She cooked meals when she visited, made jokes at the dinner table, laughed at my stories, even the ones Jason had heard 100 times. She knew how to make me feel seen. Looking back, I wonder if that was her first hook. Jason was smitten, of course. He'd always been the kind of man who put others first, sometimes to a fault. And Brooklyn leaned into that. She'd glance at him with wide, adoring eyes whenever I teased him, and he'd light up like a schoolboy. He married her in less than a year. I didn't object. Why would I? She seemed perfect. But small cracks showed early, once I brushed aside. I remember one night at dinner, maybe 3 months after their wedding. Brooklyn refilled my wine glass and said casually, "Careful, don't want to forget where you were later." She laughed softly and Jason laughed too, but I froze. "I don't forget things," I said, chuckling to keep it light. Of course, she smiled sweetly. Just teasing. Jason didn't notice the way she watched me after, as if gauging whether the barb landed. Another time, I overheard her talking to Jason in the kitchen. She said, "Your dad told me the same story twice today. Maybe he's just tired." Her voice was low, concerned. Jason brushed it off, but I couldn't shake it. I'd only told the story once. I convinced myself I was being oversensitive. That's what Brooklyn did. She always buried her insinuations in sugar. Concern, kindness, love. You'd feel guilty even questioning her intentions. Things escalated slowly. I misplaced tool in my grudge. My mail stacked in odd places. My grandson saying, "Grandma, Mom told me not to play near you when you're tired." Each little moment was easy enough to rationalize. Everyone forgets things. Everyone misplaces things. Maybe Brooklyn was just trying to keep the kids safe. But then came the incident with the medicine. I'd been taking blood pressure pills for years. One morning, Brooklyn dropped by while Jason was at work. She smiled, asked about my health, then casually mentioned she'd noticed I'd missed a dose a few days before. I frowned, confused. No, I didn't, I said. Her smile faltered just enough to look sincere. Well, maybe I saw the bottle wrong, you know me, scatterbrain. But when I checked later, the pills were rearranged. A couple missing. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was watching me unravel piece by piece. And the worst part? Jason adored her more with every passing day. He'd brag about how lucky he was how Brooklyn kept the family together. If I even hinted a concern, his face would harden. Dad, he said once, his voice sharp. Don't start. Brooklyn's the best thing that's ever happened to me. So I stayed quiet. I swallowed my doubts. I told myself maybe grief was making me paranoid, that maybe I really was forgetting more than I realized. But then came the day Brooklyn showed up at my door holding a sealed envelope. She looked hesitant, nervous, like she didn't even want to hand it to me. I found this, she said softly, pressing it into my hands. It's from the hospital. Jason doesn't know I'm giving it to you yet. I thought you should see it first. Inside were medical records with my name. Notes about early dementia, paranoia, even aggressive tendencies. I read the words over and over, my vision blurring. My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped the paper. Brooklyn, I whispered. This can't be right. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to believe it either, but the doctors, maybe we should talk to Jason together. That was the beginning of the end. I wish I could say that the moment I discovered the full extent of Brooklyn's betrayal was quick, clean, a single revelation that set everything straight. But it wasn't. It was a slow, suffocating unraveling, like watching a building collapse brick by brick and realizing, horrifyingly, that the person who built it was smiling the whole time. It started with a phone call. I was sitting alone in my kitchen, staring at the wall, when the hospital administrator called. At first, I thought it was routine. Maybe a clarification. But her voice, calm and clinical, cut through me like ice. Mr. Harrison, we've reviewed your medical records after your recent inquiry. I need to clarify something. These documents you've been shown, they are not ours, they are forgeries. You have no such diagnosis. I froze. My heart pounded. I could feel my hands clench into fists on the counter. My mind raced, a storm of relief and horror swirling together. Relief that I wasn't ill, that my mind wasn't failing. But horror because if I wasn't sick, then who had shown me those papers? Who had built this elaborate lie and fed it to me day after day until I believed it? And then the image of Brooklyn's face flashed in my mind of those teary eyes, the trembling voice, the subtle smirk I had caught that night in the living room. It hit me like a sledgehammer. I called Jason immediately. He didn't answer. I left a voice message, my voice raw, pleading. By the time he returned my call, I could barely speak without trembling. Jason, I said, trying to keep calm. It wasn't real, the records, Brooklyn lied. Everything she's told you about me, it's all lies. There was silence on the other end. Then, finally, his voice cold and sharp. I don't know what to say, Dad. I need to see the proof. I sent him the email from the hospital, attaching the administrator's statement. His response came quickly, a single line. I'll come by tomorrow. We'll talk then. That night, sleep eluded me. I kept replaying every interaction, every subtle insinuation, every concerned comment from Brooklyn. I realized that she hadn't just lied, she had meticulously constructed a reality where I seemed unstable, where my word meant nothing, and where Jason would inevitably side with her. She had manipulated everyone around me, weaving paranoia into my life until it consumed me. The next day, I arrived at the house, prepared to confront the truth. But what I saw almost broke me again. Brooklyn greeted me at the door with a radiant, innocent smile, as if nothing had changed. Hi, Dad, I've been worried about you. Are you feeling okay? I felt bile rise in my throat. The audacity of her performance was almost too much to bear. I had proof now, proof she had lied, proof she had manipulated the people I loved, but seeing her so calm, so convincing, nearly shattered me. Jason came into the room, holding his phone. He looked tired and certain, but he handed it to me anyway. Read it, he said. I read the email aloud, voice shaking. Brooklyn's smile faltered for half a second, enough to feel like a dagger in my chest, then she quickly masked it. Oh, that's interesting, she said softly. Maybe there was a clerical error. A clerical error. After months of planting lies, rearranging pills, whispering deaths into my son's ears, intimidating my grandchildren, all of it just a clerical error in her mind. Jason's expression darkened as he read further correspondence I had printed from the hospital. Brooklyn's story crumbled in front of him. His jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw anger replace confusion in his eyes. Brooklyn, he said slowly, voice low, trembling with shock and rage. Did you fabricate this? Did you make my father seem insane? She laughed softly, a high-pitched, sickly laugh that made my skin crawl. Jason, I only wanted to help. You see, the dead wasn't thinking clearly. I thought maybe it would protect everyone. Protect? I could barely comprehend the audacity. By then, my paranoia, my depression, the months of sleepless nights, the way I had questioned my own mind had all clicked. She had done it intentionally. She had reshaped my reality, made me doubt my senses, my memories, my worth, until I was weak and vulnerable, until everyone, including my own son, looked at me like I was dangerous. And the worst part? She had almost succeeded. Brooklyn had made me question my own existence and my family. My own mind had become the battlefield, and she was the puppet master pulling every string. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit something. But I didn't. I couldn't. I felt hollow, stripped of trust, stripped of love. And deep down, I knew the confrontation, the fallout was only just beginning. The day I confronted Brooklyn was the day my world split in two. I remember driving to their house, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles ached, feeling a cocktail of rage, disbelief, and heartbreak twisting inside me. I didn't know if I wanted an apology, revenge, or simply to see her fall apart, but I knew I couldn't leave without confronting the architect of my torment. I rang the doorbell, and when she opened it, her smile was too perfect, too rehearsed. "Dad, you're here early," she said, voice syrupy sweet, hiding something sharp beneath. "Brooklyn," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. "We need to talk, now." Jason appeared behind her, eyes wide. He had sensed the storm brewing, and I could see the fear and conflict written all over his face. But I didn't care about fear. I cared about truth. She stepped aside, letting me into the living room, still smiling like a wolf in a mask. I dropped the stack of papers on the coffee table, the hospital emails, proof after proof of her lies. "Read them," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Every single one. Tell me what you call this." Brooklyn glanced at Jason before speaking, her voice soft, coaxing. "Dad, I don't know what. Don't you dare start with that act." I snapped, my hand shaking. "Don't act innocent. Don't act like you were helping. You destroyed me. You poisoned my family against me. You made my son look at me like I was a stranger. You made my grandson afraid of me. And for what? Control? Power? Some sick thrill?" Jason's face hardened as he listened. For the first time, I saw the wall between him and Brooklyn cracking. "Brooklyn, is this true?" he demanded. She hesitated just a beat, and in that instant, I knew she'd been caught. "And I just wanted to make sure everyone was safe," she said, voice trembling. But the tremor wasn't guilt, it was calculation, trying to spin herself back into sympathy. I couldn't hold back any longer. "Safe?" I shouted. "You call months of fear, manipulation, and lies keeping anyone safe. I've been hospitalized because of stress you caused. My depression spiraled because of your lies. My own son almost turned against me because of you." Jason's fist clenched at his side, and for the first time, I felt him truly seeing the magnitude of what she had done. "I didn't know," he stammered, voice breaking. "I thought." "You thought?" I spat. "You thought because she cried, because she whispered, because she smiled and patted you on the shoulder, that she was telling the truth. Do you understand what she's done?" Brooklyn's face twisted, the mask slitting. She raised her voice, almost hysterical. "Jason, you don't understand. I did it for the family. I was protecting you all." "Protecting?" I said, voice low, venomous. "By making me feel like a monster in my own home." Jason shook his head, horrified. "Brooklyn, this is unforgivable. I can't." That's when my grandson appeared, clutching a small toy, his wide eyes darting between us. "Grandpa, is everything okay?" I knelt down, swallowing my fury for just a moment. "Sweetheart, everything's going to be okay, I promise." But Brooklyn, she lied to us all. The boy ran to Jason, hiding behind him, while I stood and turned back to Brooklyn. By then, the neighbours had started to notice the shouting. Someone called the police, thinking there was domestic violence. And that's when Brooklyn's web of control began to unravel completely. Authorities arrived within minutes. They listened as I explained, as Jason confirmed, as Brooklyn tried to spin her story, but this time, her lies were documented. Forged medical records, witness statements, months of emails and text. Even the hospital backed up my claims. By the end of the day, Brooklyn was facing criminal charges for fraud and psychological abuse. Social services intervened, ensuring my grandson's safety. Jason distanced himself, finally able to see her true nature. And for the first time in months, I felt a sliver of relief, though my heart still ached from betrayal. Friends and family rallied around me, some stunned at the lengths she had gone to. Others whispered that I was lucky to escape before it got worse. But the scars ran deep. Paranoia, sleepless nights, panic attacks, they didn't vanish with Brooklyn's arrest. I realized then that consequences don't undo damage. They expose it. They confirm the truth. And for Brooklyn, justice was coming. But for me, healing would be long, torturous road. The weeks after Brooklyn's exposure was surreal, like living in a world I barely recognized. The house felt emptier, quieter but not peaceful. Every creak of the floorboards made me flinch. Every phone call, every unexpected knock triggered memories of manipulation, lies, and betrayal. My own mind felt like a battlefield, haunted by months of paranoia that she had meticulously orchestrated. Therapy became my lifeline. My counsellor, Dr. Mears, helped me untangle the layers of psychological abuse I had endured. "You weren't imagining it," she said gently, but firmly. "Brooklyn gaslit you. She rewired your perception of reality. What you experienced is real trauma, and it will take time to heal." At first, I resisted. I thought healing meant moving on immediately, pretending nothing had happened. But the nightmares, the trembling hands, the flashbacks when Jason's voice reminded me of Brooklyn's whispers, none of it disappeared on its own. I had to confront it. I had to name it. I started journaling, recounting every interaction, every whisper, every subtle lie that had slowly destroyed my trust in myself. At first, the pages were full of anger, fury so raw I could almost feel it burning my chest. Then grief seeped in. Grief for the time lost, for my fractured relationship with Jason, for the innocence stolen from my grandson, and most of all, for the fatherly authority that Brooklyn had chipped away with surgical precision. Jason eventually began to visit more consistently. Our conversations were halting at first tentative. He apologized not just for believing her, but for failing to notice how her manipulations were reshaping our family dynamics. "Dad, I didn't see it. I couldn't believe someone could be so cruel," he said once, his voice choked. "I thought you were losing it. I was wrong." We started rebuilding trust in small ways. Dinners, phone calls, weekend visits. I set boundaries, clearly articulating what was acceptable and what wasn't. I realized that rebuilding wasn't about erasing the past, it was about creating a new foundation one I could trust and feel safe on. Socially, I withdrew at first. Friends who hadn't known Brooklyn questioned why I was so distant. But I learned to be selective, to surround myself with people who understood, who didn't judge, who helped me process rather than dismiss my experience. Support became a lifeline, and slowly, I felt the fog of manipulation lifting. I also had to confront the public fallout. Brooklyn's arrest made headlines in our small town. Gossip travelled fast. Some people expressed sympathy, others whispered doubt about my sanity, feeding echoes of the lies she had spread. It was exhausting, demoralizing, and deeply humiliating. But each day I reminded myself that truth, documented and verified, was on my side. The lies had fallen apart. The evidence was clear. Physically, the stress had left its mark: sleepless nights, migraines, stomach issues, but I addressed them methodically. Regular checkups, exercise, and mindfulness practices became my anchor. I started running in the mornings, letting the rhythm of my feet against the pavement clear my mind, reconnecting with my body, reclaiming control over my life. Emotionally, the journey was longer. I allowed myself to grieve not just for the betrayal, but for the lost sense of self. Therapy taught me to recognize manipulation before it could take root, to trust my instincts, to honor my experiences. I learned to forgive not Brooklyn, not her actions, but myself for doubting my own perceptions for so long. One evening, months after the confrontation, I sat on my porch with my grandson playing nearby. Jason joined me, sitting in silence for a moment before speaking. "Dad, you've changed. You're stronger. I can see it. You're finally free." And he was right. I felt not fully healed, not completely whole, but free from the grip of her manipulation, free from the shadow she had cast over my life. I still carry scars. I always will. But I also carry lessons to trust, but verify, to honor my intuition, to recognize that even those who seem loving can be destructive. Life has taken on a new rhythm. The terror, the sleepless nights, the endless doubt, they've been replaced with boundaries, awareness, and resilience. I've rebuilt my relationship with Jason and my grandson, grounded in honesty and transparency. And while I will never forget what Brooklyn did, I no longer let it define my reality. I survived. I endured. And from that wreckage, I emerged stronger, clearer, and determined to never let anyone, no matter how charming, undermine my sense of self again.